You think you know what collaboration looks like? The newsreels, the photographs, men in suits shaking hands with monsters? But there's one name that doesn't get taught in schools, one face that Slovenia tried to forget, one general who built fortifications to stop fascists, then became their most loyal servant. August 10th, 1880 to September 4th, 1946, 66 years. A lifetime of service that ended against a cemetery wall with bullets in his chest. Who was Leon Rupnik? What did he do in those final 24 hours before the firing squad? And why does his ghost still haunt courtrooms 74 years after his death? Born in Lokve near Gorizia, when it was still part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Rupnik climbed every rung. Infantry Military Academy in Trieste from 1895 to 1899. War School in Vienna, 1905 to 1907. When World War I tore Europe apart, he wore the Emperor's uniform. Captain by 1914. By the time the empire collapsed in 1918, he'd earned his rank. The new kingdom of Yugoslavia needed men like him. Staff Major in May 1919. Lieutenant Colonel by 1923, Colonel by 1927, Brigadier General June 28, 1933, Major General December 31st, 1937. 40,000 men staffing fortifications along the Italian and Austrian borders by 1941, modeled on France's Maginot Line with the same fatal flaw. When the Wehrmacht invaded on April 6, 1941, those bunkers fell like dominoes. Rupnik was Chief of Staff of 1st Army Group when the invasion came. The kingdom crumbled in 11 days. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Rupnik wasn't devastated by the defeat. He was already a Nazi sympathizer before the tanks rolled in. The Germans released him from military prison on April 17, 1941, and let him walk into Italian-occupied southern Slovenia, a Yugoslav general, free in occupied territory. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual using sources from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum Encyclopedia, published in 2024, which cross-references Slovene archival materials, trial transcripts from the 1946 Yugoslav Military Court proceedings, and the historical. Research compiled by Tamara Griser Pichar in Razdvojeni Narod, published in 2007 by Mladinska knjiga in Ljubljana, Slovenia. These aren't surface-level sources. These are the documents that sit in Ljubljana's archives. The trial records that Slovenia's Supreme Court had to review in 2020. Now back to the information. Italy surrenders. The Germans rush in. Friedrich Reiner, Nazi Gauleiter of Carinthia, consults with Roman Catholic Bishop Grigori Rozman. Who should run the new puppet government? Rozman doesn't hesitate. Leon Rupnik, quote, the most capable man for this administrative position, end quote. Provincial president installed September 20th, 1943. By March 1944, 9,213 soldiers, 263 officers, 930 non-commissioned officers, 528 senior non-commissioned officers. At peak strength, 21,000 men across all Home Guard units. 15,000 in the Province of Ljubljana, 3,500 in the Julian March, 2,500 in Upper Carniola. Officers speak Slovene but take orders from Germans. Bežigrad Stadium in Ljubljana fills with Home Guard troops. They swear their oath. Not to Slovenia, not to Yugoslavia, to Hitler, to the Führer, to fight alongside the SS and German police against communist guerrillas. Bishop Rozman holds a silent mass before the ceremony, then retreats. Rupnik stands on the platform in civilian clothes, dark suit, SS General Rosner beside him in full uniform. The second oath comes January 30th, 1945, 12 years since the Nazis took power in Germany. Another pledge, while the Reich burns. Around 400 Jews lived in the province of Ljubljana when the Italians arrived, some locals, many refugees from Austria, Germany, Croatia. When the Wehrmacht took over in September 1943, everything changed. Rupnik's provincial administration. His police force led by Lovro Hacin, his Home Guard units. They hunted down every Jew they could find. September 1944, 32 Jews had managed to hide in Ljubljana for a full year under occupation. Someone betrayed them. Home Guard police raids. 32 arrests and coordinated sweeps, turned over to Nazi authorities, shipped to Auschwitz. Almost none returned. Roughly 800 Jews, 90% of Slovenia's pre-war Jewish population, killed in the Holocaust. Rupnik's administration helped make it happen. June 5th, 1944, Polhov Gradec. Rupnik gives a speech. Quote, with solid trust in the righteousness of the leader of Europe, of the German nation, we must calmly and with all fanaticism lead the battle against Jewish global supremacy, serving Stalin's and Tito's bandits and their assistants, Anglo-American gangsters, end quote. Earlier that year in Ljubljana, another lecture, title, Bolshevism: a tool of international Judaism. Subtitle: Jewish endeavors towards global supremacy. He tells the crowd that Jews' hatred must be challenged, that nations must remove all parasites. This isn't coded language. This is a Yugoslav general turned Nazi puppet, calling for the destruction of Jews, while his police round them up for the gas chambers. Partisan supporters get arrested as prostitutes. The police corps creates lists for Nazi concentration camps. The Black Hand, a secret police organization, tortures and kills suspected Liberation Front members. Estimates range from 129 to 1,000 Slovenes murdered. Anti-partisan intelligence officer Colonel Vladimir Vaunik writes in 1944 that the police and Slovene Home Guard, quote, have mopped up everything that could be suspected of leftist sympathies, end quote. When some Home Guard leaders try to plan an uprising against the Nazis, Rupnik refuses to help. When his former collaborators get arrested and sent to Dachau, he doesn't intervene. Complete loyalty to German occupation authorities. Soviet flags fly over Berlin. Rupnik flees north to Austria with 20 collaborators, just 20 men from an administration that once controlled thousands. British forces arrest him July 23rd in a refugee camp. He spends months in British custody, waiting, knowing. In January 1946, the British hand him over to Yugoslav military authorities. Tito's government controls Yugoslavia. They want trials. They want executions. Rupnik stands trial alongside SS General Erwin Rosner and Police Chief Lovro Hacin. 3 men, 1 courtroom. The prosecution lays out the charges: treason, war crimes, collaboration with occupying forces. The evidence stacks high: documents, witness testimony, records of arrests, records of deportations, the speeches Rupnik gave calling for the destruction of Jews and communists, the oaths his troops swore to Hitler, the coordination between his police and the Gestapo. August 30th, 1946. Verdict: death for treason. 3 death sentences. Rupnik gets the firing squad. Rosner and Hassan get the rope. Death stands. September 4th, 2 days away. The Germans who protected him are dead, or in Allied custody. His son Vuk served as an active Home Guard officer, commanded one of the most belligerent units. His son-in-law, Stanko Kokeper, will eventually flee to Argentina and write a book trying to rehabilitate Rupnik's reputation. But in September 1946, none of that matters. Rupnik is alone in a communist prison waiting to die. The night of September 3rd. Last meal, last sleep if sleep comes, the knowledge that sunrise means death. Did he think about the Jews his police arrested? The 32 who hid for a year before his forces found them? Did he remember the speeches where he called them parasites? The stadiums where his troops swore loyalty to Hitler? Or did he still believe he served Slovenia, that fighting communism justified everything? They're transported to jail cemetery on the city's edge. For Rosner and Hassan, gallows. They'll hang. But Rupnik gets different treatment. Military execution. Firing squad. Maybe because he was once a general. The reason doesn't matter to a dead man. No crowds. No photographs for newspapers. Yugoslav military justice. Swift, final. Rupnik stands where they tell him to stand. The firing squad takes position. Officers, soldiers, men doing their duty under the new regime. The order comes. The rifles fire. Leon Rupnik falls September 4th, 1946, 66 years old, former Austro-Hungarian officer, former Yugoslav general, Nazi collaborator, war criminal, dead. The communist authorities don't want martyrs or pilgrimage sites. 3 death sentences carried out, 3 bodies in the ground. The trials continue. 3 others at the same proceedings escape execution. Vilko Vizjak gets prison time. Mahakrek gets prison time. Bishop Grigori Rajman gets tried in absentia, convicted, but he's already in exile. The purge moves forward. Thousands of Home Guard members who fled to Austria get forcibly repatriated by British authorities. Mass executions follow. 11,400 Domobranci shot in the weeks and months after the war. Death marches between prison camps. The mass graves get documented by Slovenia's Commission on Concealed Mass Graves decades later. Investigations running from November 2005 to October 2009. If you care about documented history and preventing the rehabilitation of war criminals, subscribe right now. Comment below which aspect of this case troubles you most. Sympathizers start the Whisper campaign. Maybe he wasn't that bad. Maybe he protected Slovenia. Maybe fighting communism justified the methods. The narrative shifts over decades. By the 1990s, some call collaborators anti-communist patriots. Then 2014. Rupnik's grandson files a petition from Argentina, challenges the 1946 verdict, claims the trial was unjust. The case winds through Slovenia's courts. January 2020. Slovenia's Supreme Court makes a decision that shocks the world. They annul the death sentence. They rule the trial didn't meet legal standards. They send it back for retrial. But Slovenian law says if the accused is dead, proceedings must stop. Cannot retry a dead man. Which means legally, Rupnik's guilt is no longer established. The conviction is voided. The Simon Wiesenthal Center issues immediate condemnation. Director Ephraim Zurov writes to Slovenia's ambassador to Israel, quote, "This shameful decision constitutes a shocking distortion of the history of the Holocaust and a horrific insult to Rupnik's many victims and their families." End quote. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum updates its encyclopedia entry. The Jewish Cultural Center of Ljubljana releases a statement expressing shock. They call it, quote, "the first step in a politically motivated aspiration to rehabilitate the criminal collaborationist regime during World War II," end quote. The city of Ljubljana itself joins the challenge. Multiple parties file a motion with Slovenia's constitutional court. They argue the Supreme Court ruling violates international criminal law standards. The Constitutional Court accepts the motion. But as of today, years later, no final ruling. The case sits pending. The legal limbo continues. Rupnik's conviction remains annulled. His guilt remains legally unestablished. Not because new facts emerged, but because a court decided procedural standards in 1946 didn't meet 2020 expectations. Archives exist, documents exist, witness testimony exists, but legally, officially, Rupnik's guilt is unestablished. That's the door the Supreme Court opened. That's the door revisionists walk through. The deportations, the speeches against Jews, the oaths to Hitler, the execution, the legal battle 70 years later, they see old military architecture and move on. These weren't trials. These were revenge killings, summary executions, death marches. The communist partisans who won the war didn't forgive the Home Guard members who fought against them. Justice mixed with vengeance, but Rupnik and Rosener and Hassan got trials, military courts, formal charges. Evidence presented, verdicts rendered, death sentences based on findings of guilt. That's more than the 11,400 Domobranci received. More than the 800 Slovene Jews killed in the Holocaust received. More than the 32 Jews arrested in September 1944 received. They got trials, they got procedures, they got appeals. Then, 74 years later, Slovenia's Supreme Court decided it wasn't enough. Somewhere among the other graves, Leon Rupnik's bones lie without identification. No family members visit because nobody knows the exact location. The communist authorities buried him quickly and recorded minimal details. Deliberate obscurity. The physical body is gone, returned to Earth. But the legal status of that body changed in 2020, from executed war criminal to legally non-guilty person awaiting retrial that can never happen. Appeal to the right courts? Maybe your grandfather, the Nazi collaborator, becomes legally innocent again. Maybe the Holocaust perpetrator's conviction gets annulled. Maybe the war criminal's guilt becomes unestablished. That's what Rupnik's grandson achieved from Argentina. That's what the Supreme Court of Slovenia enabled. That's what the Constitutional Court hasn't yet fixed. His appointment under German occupation, his involvement in organizing the Home Guard, the deportation of Jews, his anti-Semitic speeches, his trial, his execution, then the 2020 annulment. They note that, quote, "The Supreme Court's decision means that the legally established guilt of Leon Rupnik is no longer recognized by the court. This legal uncertainty makes Rupnik's legacy less clear. If his guilt is not legally reestablished, his supporters and apologists could be more likely to try to deny his crimes and rehabilitate his legacy," end quote. Circular logic that works because people want it to work. Because some Slovenes want heroes who fought communism. Because some want to believe the partisans were the real villains. That's the narrative. That's the revision. That's the lie. Documents don't lie even when courts annul convictions. The province of Ljubljana, under Rupnik's administration, coordinated with German authorities to hunt Jews. That's documented. The Home Guard police, under Lovro Hacin, created lists of political prisoners for Nazi concentration camps. That's documented. The 32 Jews arrested in September 1944, that's documented. The deportation to Auschwitz, that's documented. The 800 Slovene Jews killed in the Holocaust, that's documented. Rupnik's speeches calling for battle against Jewish global supremacy. Those are documented with full transcripts available. The April 20th, 1944 oath ceremony, where 21,000 Home Guard members swore loyalty to Hitler. That's documented with photographs and witness testimony. None of this becomes undocumented because a court in 2020 annuls a conviction. The facts remain facts. Without trials, perpetrators become controversial figures instead of criminals. Without legal accountability, history becomes negotiable. That's the danger the Supreme Court created, not just for Rupnik, for every World War II case, for every collaboration conviction. The precedent extends beyond one general. It threatens the entire framework of post-war justice. How to judge, how to punish or forgive. These aren't easy questions, but there are clear lines. Leon Rupnik crossed them, not by surviving, not by serving in government, by actively facilitating Holocaust deportations, by giving anti-Semitic speeches, by organizing military oaths to Hitler, by maintaining complete loyalty to German Nazi occupation authorities. Those aren't gray areas, those are crimes. The mass executions of 11,400 Domobranci were crimes. Tito's Yugoslavia wasn't innocent. The partisans did terrible things. But that doesn't make Rupnik innocent, doesn't make his collaboration acceptable, doesn't make his role in Jewish deportations forgivable. You can condemn communist atrocities, while still recognizing that executing Leon Rupnik for war crimes was justice. Both things can be true simultaneously. No confession, no final statement beyond what he said in court. He pleaded guilty but claimed noble motives, claimed he served Slovenia, claimed he fought communism. Did he believe it that final night? Did he think future generations would call him a patriot? Or did he know the truth? Did he understand that collaborating with Nazis who murdered Jews made him a criminal regardless of his claimed motives? We can't know. Dead men don't answer questions. Rose to general, engineered the Rupnik Line fortifications, became mayor of Ljubljana under Italian occupation June 7, 1942, became president of provincial government under German occupation September 20th, 1943, helped organize the Slovene Home Guard, presided over administration that facilitated arrest and deportation of 32 Jews in September 1944, gave anti-Semitic speeches throughout 1944, led troops in loyalty oaths to Hitler, maintained complete loyalty to German occupation until May 5, 1945, when he fled, arrested by British July 23, 1945, tried by Yugoslav Military Court in August 1946, convicted August 30, 1946. Clemency denied September 2, 1946, executed by firing squad, September 4, 1946, buried unmarked grave, jail cemetery, same day. Conviction annulled by Slovenian Supreme Court, January 2020. Birth to death to legal resurrection. The bones stay buried, but the reputation gets rehabilitated. That's modern revisionism. That's how history gets rewritten. Not by changing facts, by changing legal status, by creating enough uncertainty that supporters can claim innocence, by waiting until everyone who remembered is dead so documents become the only witnesses, and documents can be disputed. Whether Holocaust perpetrators' descendants can successfully rehabilitate their ancestors through procedural arguments. The motion has sat pending for years, no rush. Just legal proceedings at bureaucratic pace while revisionists claim victory and Holocaust scholars protest and the Jewish community watches nervously. 66 years of life, 79 years of death. Time erases memory, witnesses die, documents get archived, students learn abbreviated versions, World War II becomes dates without texture, Rupnik becomes a footnote, then the footnote gets challenged, then the challenge succeeds. Then someone can write a history without mentioning Rupnik's crimes because legally they're unestablished. That's how genocide gets forgotten, not all at once, piece by piece, case by case. The 32 Jews arrested in September 1944 don't have legal representation at Slovenia's constitutional court. They're dead. The 800 Slovene Jews killed in the Holocaust don't file briefs. They're dead. The 6,000 political prisoners don't submit testimony. Most are dead. Everyone directly involved is dead. Only documents remain. Only historians and legal scholars arguing about whether a military court in 1946 conducted trials properly enough. But Slovenia's Supreme Court said no, and now the Constitutional Court decides, and whatever they decide, Rupnik's bones will continue lying in an unmarked grave. The earth doesn't care about verdicts, but the precedent matters, the message matters. If Rupnik's conviction can be annulled, whose can't be? If Holocaust perpetrators' descendants can successfully rehabilitate their ancestors, who remains permanently guilty? Before we let revisionism win because fighting is exhausting and everyone who remembers is dead anyway, 79 years, is that long enough? Or should we keep defending historical truth even when courts annul convictions and witnesses are gone and only documents remain? Because documents are enough, because documents don't lie, because documents preserve truth beyond memory, beyond politics, beyond legal maneuvering. The body in the ground or the legal status of that body. The execution that happened or the procedural questions about whether it should have happened. The Holocaust that killed 800 Slovene Jews, including 32 arrested by Rupnik's police, or the legal technicality. The speeches calling for battle against Jewish global supremacy, or the grandson's petition filed 70 years later claiming unfairness. Leon Rupnik was a Nazi collaborator who facilitated Holocaust deportations and swore troops to Hitler and gave anti-Semitic speeches, and ran a police state that jailed 6,000 people and died in front of a firing squad, and deserved every bullet. His conviction should stand regardless of procedural questions, because the facts remain facts and the dead remain dead, and justice demands recognition of truth, even 79 years later. That's one choice. Or Leon Rupnik was a complicated figure who tried to protect Slovenia through tactical collaboration, got caught on the wrong side of history and received an unfair trial and deserves posthumous rehabilitation. That's another choice, presented as equivalent, but they're not. One is supported by documents, one is supported by revision, one honors victims, one erases crimes. Because the alternative is letting time erase truth, letting courts rewrite history, letting Holocaust perpetrators become disputed figures, letting collaboration become normalized, letting anti-Semitism become contextualized, letting murder become excused. Leon Rupnik died. The execution was justice. The conviction was earned. The sentence was appropriate. 79 years haven't changed that. A Supreme Court annulment doesn't change that. Legal technicalities don't change that. The unmarked grave in jail cemetery holds a war criminal whether Slovenia's courts acknowledge it or not. The documents prove it. The witnesses testified to it. The victims experienced it. That truth remains true regardless of what happens next in legal proceedings or cultural debates or historical revisionism. Truth doesn't need a conviction to be true, but justice needs convictions to be justice, and Slovenia must choose which matters more. The bones in the unmarked grave or the legal fiction that maybe they belong to someone innocent? His conviction voided by Slovenia's Supreme Court in January 2020. A retrial ordered for a dead man, which means no trial at all. Guilt unestablished. History erased. The Constitutional Court, holding the last appeal, remains silent. The unmarked grave in jail cemetery holds bones, but the Slovenian state no longer legally calls them the bones of a traitor. He was the political face, the general in the civilian suit. To understand how his rehabilitation was possible, you have to look at the man who stood beside him in spirit, the man who gave this collaboration its moral legitimacy, the man whose ghost is also being scrubbed clean. Bishop Grigorij Rozman. The quote, "The most capable man for this administrative position," an endorsement from the highest Catholic authority in Slovenia, an endorsement for a man already known for his pro-Nazi sympathies. He was an active participant in the anti-communist collaborationist structure. When the Slovene Home Guard swore its first oath to Hitler on April 20th, 1944, Bishop Rozman was there. He held a silent mass at the stadium just before the troops pledged their lives to the Führer. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His presence was the blessing. It was God's stamp of approval on an oath of treason. He met with Rupnik. He met with SS General Erwin Rosner, the man hanged alongside Rupnik. The church and the collaborationist state were intertwined. Rozman provided the moral cover. Rupnik provided the administrative muscle. Rosner provided the SS terror, a trinity of occupation. When the Reich fell, Rozman fled. May 1945. He made his way to Austria, then Switzerland, eventually settling in the United States, in Cleveland, Ohio. The new Yugoslav government tried him in absentia. Same trial, August 1946. The same one that condemned Rupnik, Rosner, and Hatzin. The verdict for Rozman, guilty of collaboration. Sentence, 18 years in prison with forced labor, loss of citizenship, loss of civil rights. A free man. Improper notification of the trial for a man living in exile. The legal slate wiped clean. Then, 13 years later, rehabilitate the political authority, the general. Let's dissect the legal argument. The Supreme Court's decision on Rupnik hinged on procedural standards. The 1946 trial, they argued, was fundamentally unfair. It was a military court, not a civilian one. The standards of evidence were different. The defendant's rights were limited. It was, in their words, not a trial that meets modern, peacetime, democratic legal standards. It was a trial held by the victors against the vanquished leaders who had collaborated with the Nazis. Post-war justice is, by definition, messy. It's an attempt to impose order on chaos, to hold perpetrators accountable using the legal tools available at the end of a world-ending conflict. To apply the standards of a peaceful, stable, 2020 European Union member state to a 1946 Yugoslav military court is not a legal argument. It is an anachronism. It is a deliberate, politically motivated choice to invalidate the past using the standards of the present. It's a legal trick, a loophole big enough to drive a rehabilitated reputation through. They just said the trial that convicted him for it was flawed. The idea that men like Rupnik and Rozman were not pro-Nazi, but simply anti-communist. That they were godless, brutal, and wanted to destroy the Slovene nation, its traditions, and its church. And that in the face of this existential communist threat, Rupnik and Rozman had to make a terrible choice. They had to side with the other occupying power, the Germans, as the lesser of two evils. The SS coordination, A tactical necessity, the anti-Semitic speeches? Just rhetoric to please their German protectors? The execution of 11,400 repatriated Home Guard members was a mass murder, a war crime in its own right. We documented that. The post-war communist regime in Yugoslavia was a dictatorship. It jailed political prisoners. It suppressed speech. It repressed religion. All of this is true. He chose to become mayor under the Italians in 1942. He chose to accept the presidency from the Nazis in 1943. He did not have to order his police, led by Lovro Hatzin, to hunt down the 32 Jews hiding in Ljubljana and hand them over to the Gestapo for transport to Auschwitz. He wasn't fighting for Slovenia. He was fighting for a Slovenia that was a vassal state of the Third Reich, a Slovenia that was Judenfrei, free of Jews. He wasn't defending his home. He was helping the Nazis hunt his neighbors. This false choice, that you must be either pro-communist or pro-fascist, is the trap that revisionists set. We refuse to step in it. You can condemn the partisans for their crimes and condemn the collaborators for theirs. You can mourn the 11,400 Domobranci shot in summary executions and mourn the 800 Slovene Jews murdered in the Holocaust with the help of Rupnik's administration. It argues that to be a true Slovene patriot, you must condemn the communists. And to condemn the communists, you must forgive or even celebrate their enemies, the collaborators. This is the work we do. Revisionists paint them as Croatian patriots. In Serbia, they rehabilitate the Chetniks, royalists who fought communists, but also collaborated with Italians and Germans and committed massacres against non-Serbs. In Hungary, Miklos Horthy, the wartime leader and Hitler ally who oversaw the deportation of 400,000 Jews, is recast as a noble statesman. In the Baltic states, monuments go up to men who served in Waffen-SS units, rebranded as freedom fighters who fought the Soviets. It is the same pattern, the double genocide theory. The idea that Nazi and Soviet crimes were equivalent, and since the Soviet occupation lasted 50 years, it was the greater evil. Therefore, anyone who fought the Soviets, even alongside the Nazis, was a patriot. This is what Rupnik's case represents. He is Slovenia's entry in this disgusting competition. The annulment of his conviction is a signal, a green light from the nation's highest court, that it is now acceptable to launder the reputation of a Nazi puppet. Rupnik remains in his unmarked grave. The 32 Jews from Ljubljana remain ashes scattered from Auschwitz. The 11,400 Domobranci remain in mass graves. Those who want to build a modern Slovenian identity based on a pure, nationalist, Catholic, anti-communist foundation. And to do that, they must erase the inconvenient fact that the most prominent anti-communists of the 20th century were also Nazi collaborators. They must sanitize the past to legitimize the present. They lived in Argentina, in the United States, in Canada, in Australia. They passed down a story of victimhood, a story where their parents and grandparents weren't collaborators who fled justice, but patriots who lost a noble war. Rupnik's son-in-law, Stanko Kociper, wrote the book in Argentina trying to rehabilitate him. Decades later, the grandson files the petition. This isn't just history, it's family pride. It's an organized, multi-generational effort to rewrite the family ledger. And in 2020, they found a Supreme Court willing to sign off on it. As long as the annulment stands, Rupnik is not legally a war criminal. His guilt is unestablished. To the event, what is the legacy of September 4th, 1946? Was it justice, or was it murder? The 11,400 executions in the weeks after the war. That was murder. Summary execution. Revenge. They stood in a courtroom. They heard charges. The prosecution presented evidence, documents, speeches, orders, witness testimony. Rupnik was allowed to speak. He pleaded guilty to collaboration, but claimed his motives were pure. He had a defense, he had an appeal. The Supreme Court of the Yugoslav Army reviewed his petition for clemency. They rejected it on September 2nd. Was it justice? By the standards of 1946, for a man who helped send his fellow citizens to gas chambers, yes. It has prioritized the procedural complaints of the perpetrator's grandson over the documented agony of the victims. Their deaths are the collateral damage of the anti-communist struggle. Louder, again and again. Leon Rupnik was a Nazi collaborator. He ran a puppet government for the German Reich. His administration facilitated the Holocaust. His troops swore an oath to Adolf Hitler. He gave speeches calling for the destruction of Jews. He was tried, convicted, and executed for treason and war crimes. The deportation records to Auschwitz don't disappear. The Constitutional Court of Slovenia must decide which one defines their nation's history. It is being fought over right now in courtrooms and parliaments. If you believe in defending documented factual history against these revisionist projects, subscribe. Support this work. Does anti-communism ever excuse collaboration with fascism? We need to have this conversation, because the ghosts of 1946 are not gone. They are back, and they are demanding we call them heroes.